Shaun Bailey is the Tory candidate to be Mayor of London. Now, I think it's fair to say there's quite a lot of things we do not agree on. I know you like that. You want me to chat to people who have very different opinions to my own. And there are a lot of things kicking off in London, not least a surge in crime, for example, knife crime. And I want to talk to him about whether austerity, about cuts, whether it be to youth services or the police, have helped to fuel that surge in crime. But I want to talk to him about other things, whether it be multiculturalism, LGBTQ rights, and some of the things that he said in the past. I want to find out, they're quite free to, by the way, does he still defend them? Does he still agree with them? And will he even say sorry for some of them? Shaun, I'm nostalgic. We used to spend many a Friday night together.
That's right.
That sounds
that's
weird.
Right.
Can I just clarify? It wasn't romantic. On 5 Live. Blimey, those Friday nights babbling on about newspapers.
Yeah.
We did the paper review, just so people know what I'm talking about. Why are we here? What are we sitting here for? What's going on?
So this is my ends, this is my origin, this is where I started youth work seriously. Before that, I'd worked a lot of summer schemes, was bitten by the bug of being around my community, having the conversations, playing table tennis, organising trips.
What makes you want to be mayor?
It's a weird thing to wake up in the morning and think, I should be mayor of London. That's not my headspace. My headspace is more, we need to give people a viable alternative. And unfortunately, politics has become so tribal, we're not having conversations anymore that we can learn from one another. You talked about 5 Live. I remember some of our exchanges being me having to concede that you might be right. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Don't tell anyone. But the point being, nobody has a monopoly on common sense, and you need to learn. And I want a politics in London that's almost devoid of party politics, but is focused on issues.
One of the big issues in this whole mayoral campaign will be crime.
Yes.
Not least knife crime, the senseless loss of life of so many young people on the streets of London and all across the country. But obviously you're standing for mayor here. Now, there are many different factors, everyone would agree, and each case the kind of specific factors will vary. Mm-hmm. But would you accept that austerity, cuts to police numbers, cuts to youth services, have had a role in the rise in crime in the city, in Greater London?
Yes. But there's no doubt in my mind. I remember when I was at number 10, for people who don't know, I used to be special advisor. I'm on record as opposing the cuts. I remember sort of leaving my nice cushy jobs because I didn't like the way the cuts were going. And I remember civil servants at the time and politicians saying to me, okay, Shaun, you've got your view and we accept that, but you've got to remember the cuts came from somewhere. We didn't just cut because we like it. We cut because we do not have the financial power to do the things, invest in services in the way that people are asking us to because of what we received.
So hold on, one factor in the increase in crime?
They're one, and I would argue, a smallish factor in the increase in crime. There's other much more important things. The magic money tree, right, is one of the biggest ways of making sure poor people suffer. You've got to be financially prudent so that you can help those people. You can't spend money that you don't have, because all you do is make the situation that much worse in the future.
But this point about the magic money tree, when the Conservatives came to power in 2017, they talked about the magic money tree throughout the election. But as soon as they needed to do a deal with the DUP, they had £1 billion to spare. When David Cameron, when you were at number 10, they cut taxes on the rich. Revenue that could have gone on to police officers and youth services. So choices could have been made to bring in the revenue to avoid those cuts. So did you argue for that when you were in number 10?
Yeah, I absolutely argue for that. But let's be clear.
So just to be clear, you argued against the cuts to police services?
Absolutely, I argued against it. Obviously, my main focus, just because my background was more around councils, youth work, that kind of thing.
What did you tell them on youth services and who?
I told them, you've got to understand, right, there's many people who rely on these services, and more importantly, I've always seen youth work as a sort of positive uplift, whatever situation. If you're having a good time, you can have a better time. If you're having a bad time, you can help repair that.
Do you think any of the police cuts should be reversed in London that were imposed by the
Yes, they should be reversed. If you're talking in pure police numbers, there's a few things I'd do. I would get more police, but I'd also ask them to do different things. And for me, the asking them to do different things is equally, if not more important. There's things we could be doing with police morale, with police technology, with the systems that the police use to massively lift up their effectiveness. Not least police training. That is what I would be doing.
London has a large Muslim population, and you yourself, in my own newspaper, have written about taking on Islamophobia and challenging Tommy Robinson. Now, Saeeda Varsi, who's the former chair of the Conservative Party, she said that in the Conservatives, Islamophobia is very widespread. It exists from the grassroots all the way up to the top, but is being ignored by Tory leaders. Is she right?
I would say no. Do you find people as Islamophobic? I think it underplays the problem to just say it's in the Conservative Party. I think you're looking, population-wide. You could find pockets of that poor behaviour everywhere.
Numerous people who've been suspended for Islamophobia in the Conservative Party after the media discovered these individuals were then reinstated promptly.
What do you mean by numerous?
The latest
Let's
wave
have both.
are 40. Saidi Varsi's call for an inquiry into Islamophobia in the Tories. Do you support him?
No, not at this point. The coming up with the recommendations takes time. Just do it. Just get into it. To me, it's
But
not
they're
rocket
not,
science.
that's the problem.
It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. Do it.
But they're not.
Ban
That's the
people.
problem. That's what Baroness Varsi keeps saying. She's been talking about this for 2.5 years and she's been ignored. That's why she's calling for an inquiry.
See, I wouldn't agree she's been ignored.
Do you still think that accommodating Muslims and Hindus robs Britain of its community and risks the country slipping into a crime-riddled cesspool?
That's a comment that I made earlier. First and foremost, that wasn't what I was talking about. What I was talking about is education.
I've got the comments in full, just so people know I'm not taking out of context. You bring your children to school and they've learned far more about Diwali than Christmas. I speak to the people who are from Brent and they've been having Muslim and Hindi days off. What it does is rob Britain of its community. Without our community, we slip into a crime-riddled cesspool. Do you stand by those comments?
Slick career politicians who've never spent 10 minutes dealing with anybody in any sort of tough situation always say things that sound nice and smooth. Was it the best language, Owen? Absolutely not. Was some people upset about it? And I'm very sorry for that.
I'm not actually after. Sorry.
I know you're not. But what I'm trying to get across to you, you're asking me, yeah. Do I stand by those things? What I'm saying to you is those comments were made in a context, a very specific context, very specific context.
I read the full context there. Do you agree with that? Is what I'm asking.
Not now. Because because of those conversations, people have moved on, communities have grown, have become stronger, have enough space to represent themselves. Their children are not being separated from education. Our multiculturalism now is a very different vehicle to what it was then, so no.
Do you still think good-looking girls tend to have been around?
That was me reflecting in that, because I was interviewed in that situation, reflecting the language of which people were using and how we were dealing with those
But it
conversations.
says if a girl appeals to one that way, she'll appeal to all of them. She'll tend to have been around.
Yeah, and that was me saying how things that other people had said to me and the myth busting we were having to do.
You weren't quoting anyone, just to be very clear on this. This was your own opinions.
No, they weren't my own opinions. It was me reflecting the opinions I had to be dealing with.
Okay, so for example, you said gals getting knocked up to get housing. It's a cottage industry where I come from.
We had a system that would reward you for making yourself vulnerable, and I was trying to challenge that system because that had repercussions for us for years. Because let's be clear, Owen. Yeah, remember, you're talking to someone who's the child of a single parent. I came from that environment, and I understood how hard it was for my mum, how my sister and other people were entering that process, and what was being said to them about it.
But that's a separate issue from this. What you were saying of cottage industry, you're saying rampantly young girls are getting themselves intentionally pregnant in order to be awarded housing. Yeah. Isn't that very, very degrading indeed?
No, I think it was sharp. It was hard. It was raw. It was where I was. It was where I was.
But do you agree with that? It was your opinion.
It was where I was. I was stating for us what was a fact.
But do you still
it was the only way.
Do you still believe it's
It was
true?
the only way we would get housed.
This is what you said later on. When I was a kid, there was none of that PC nonsense. If you were wrong, they told you so. The teachers were men then.
It's a turn of phrase.
What does it mean to be a man in that case? What do you mean they were manly?
Straight up. Take people on. Say to people, come on.
So do you think teachers have become more effeminate? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I think teachers have been manoeuvred to corner. Oftentimes they're afraid. It's not worth them taking people on. They have their careers challenged and ruined over it.
I mean, you once said that ending domestic violence starts with girls. If you could get girls to accept less of men's rubbish, then men would have to change because ultimately men are after a girl. Surely that's shifting responsibility for men's actions onto their victims, and it's men who need to change. So do you regret those comments? Because that
no,
does suggest,
I tell you why. So there's two things. You're completely right. It's a man's issue, but it's about safety as well. It's about also making sure that you take every step to make yourself safe. It starts and ends with men, yes, but again, Owen, dealing with people in this situation, being asked that question in the context of girls. So you're saying to girls, don't let them tell you this rubbish. Don't let them make you believe these things about yourself. You're more than that.
So you are withdrawing the comment because you don't think it starts.
It's more than that. There's more than that, and you must make sure that you have a view of yourself that doesn't allow them to preach rubbish into you. Owen, I go back to the fact that when I did work on the ground, where did I start that work? Where? I started it with boys.
Right.
Why? Because it's the boys who are the perpetrators. And more importantly, I wanted to change the culture around the conversations people are having in this case,
So
particularly
you
boys.
do think it doesn't start with girls, does it? We're very clear about that.
Yeah.
Ending male violence doesn't start with
No,
girls.
yes.
So you would withdraw that comment?
Yeah, again, Owen, if this whole thing of me, coming from a raw place, speaking to people who are in equally raw place, if not more, shouting out to slick career politicians who have, hundreds of advisors, tell them don't say this, it might look bad in a couple of years. I didn't have that. I had to deal with what I was dealing with.
You were 36
so hold on.
when you said that.
I didn't try to suggest I was a child, Owen. That's
No,
not what I'm saying.
you're older than me.
No, I was just saying.
We're both baby faces, admittedly.
No, thank you. I'm just saying it's about dealing with the situation in a tough situation, and I challenge anyone to be in the situation I was in and not have to have those conversations, say those things.
But the problem I have with that is it's this suggestion it's a kind of a class issue here. You're someone from a working class background speaking truth to politicians from privileged, stuck up, out of touch, Ivy Tower backgrounds. But I know, some of the strongest feminists I know and fighters against male violence are working class women, and they would never ever. They're from the same estates you are. They would never say that ending domestic violence starts with girls. They would abhor that idea.
Fast forward 10, 15 years, it is whatever it is now, with a different start point, a different level of sophistication, a different life journey. Of course, you might express it differently, but right there, right then, that's what was happening.
So, quick fire round on LGBTQ rights. Equal marriage. Do you support equal marriage?
It's already happened. Who in your community, in the LGBT community, would have thought it'd been the Conservatives?
I know it's already happened.
No. But I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm just saying that. Who would have thought it'd been the Conservatives?
Do you support equal marriage?
Yeah, it's happened. It's great. I've been to.
I know it's happening, but do you
I've been to a
support
wedding.
it?
I don't know what else to say. I've been to the wedding. It's great. Get married. Like I say, if you find someone who loves you, marry them.
But you do support
Yes,
equal marriage.
marry them.
So you do support.
Marry them.
Say I support equal marriage.
I support equal rights. Marriage. Marry them.
There we go. Great. Okay. Is gay sex a sin?
No.
Are trans women women?
Yeah. I suppose how you feel about gender. Yes, they would say they're women. Yes.
No. Do you think?
Yes,
trans
because
women are women?
I have to take your view on who you are. Yes.
The housing crisis. How are you going to solve it?
Two things. The current mayor has a ban on strategic industrial land. He says there must be no net loss of it. That's 95% of brownfield sites in London are strategic industrial land. So it's effectively put a ban at looking on their sites. I'd remove that immediately, because what will really address house prices in London, what really helps is supply, and you need somewhere to build in low land value. I think we do that as well. So that's the first sort of big thing. I don't think we need to build on the green belt. I simply don't. I think we can go up in the correct places, but I'd also look at transport links. Transport links opens up different places for development that currently are not relevant now because they're hard to get to as well, and we've got to do something for people who rent. So the sort of big ticket figures are making sure we work with the government to push down on spurious charges. The government have just changed this thing around no fault evictions. I think that will actually help rents. I don't want to say come down, but it might help them rise less slowly, stabilise as well.
Do you support regulating rents, for example?
No,
Berlin?
never worked.
But it works in Berlin,
No,
Amsterdam.
it does not.
Have you been to Amsterdam?
Amsterdam is multiple times smaller. Their land values are nowhere near where ours are.
What's that got to do with why regulating rents won't work?
Because that's what drives how expensive rent is. Land value. What attracts investment is about land value. It's a big part of what attracts investment, what it costs to build. It's a very
So
important
what do you
part
say
of it.
I disagree very strongly in terms of regulating rents. It works in lots of major cities across the world. Council housing, do we need to build far more than we are at the moment?
Yes.
Would you be lobbying the government if you're mayor? Because there's been some movement, but very little.
Yes, and more than demand, you'd support councils to build more as well. I don't think there's enough of a partnership between City Hall and councils, because I think local councils want to deliver on that. Regardless of their political persuasion, you need to help them deliver on that.
Finally, transport. What's your commitment on fares? What are you going to do?
I think anybody who tells you that there's going to be no fares rise is lying to you. Right just now, the poor financial management and state of TfL means that a fare rise of some kind will happen.
I cycled here. What would you do to improve cycle infrastructure?
I think one of the key things is to get as much traffic off the road as we can by providing a viable alternative. There's lots of parts of London, particularly centrally, that would be very nice if they're pedestrianised. And I think what you've got to build into that then is a proper transport link, access for cycles, and probably black cabs as well, because of their ability to deliver disabled people with mobility issues. We've had a lot of talk about who cycles. It's basically a white middle class man's world, cycling. This is a fact. If you want to get other people to cycle, you're going to have to give them a place to practice, get used to it, see the relevance of it. I think cycling to and fro locally is as important to building cycle numbers as the sort of super highway to the middle of town, because it's where people start their sort of cycling career, as it were.
Finally, London. What are your 3 favourite things about London?
Home. I was born here. I love it here. My family's here largely. I like the hustle of London. You know, I was in the back of a cab the other day, and the guy was telling me his plans for his big business he's going to start, and it just reminded me he's a hustler, he's a Londoner. I like that about it. And I suppose for me as well, it's the physicality. One of the things that campaigning, you realise just how big London is, and just how different. I mean, the difference between a place like Surbiton and Portobello Road is enormous, and I like the fact we have that variety.
Nice one, Shaun. Cheers for that. So I think that was a pretty wide-ranging conversation, to say the least. I want to know what you think about that. I want to know what you think about his explanation for those past comments. Is it just being raw, as he said quite a lot, or are they really defensible? I also want to know what you think about, you know, his explanation about cuts to the police and to youth services and the surge of crimes, about Islamophobia within the Conservative Party. Did he answer the questions? I just want to hear your thoughts on it. I want to hear your suggestions, though, about who else I talk to. We've got loads of interviews, as ever, so just click on them or something. And as ever, subscribe. I'll see you next time.